Hello, welcome back to another video. Thank you for joining me today. Today I am going to show you 6 different techniques that you can use with stencils. Now I'm going to use one stencil so you can see it a number of different ways. This is by Brutus Monroe and it's called Falling Leaves. The first thing I'm going to do is grab my stencil mat. This is a waffle flower mat and it is a non-stick mat that is great for holding your paper and your stencil in place. I also have some cardstock that's cut down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to use a bunch of tape today. So I got my mint tape from scrapbook.com. I find it easier to do blending with stencils if I tape my paper to the stencil and then tape the stencil to the work surface. If your paper and your stencil are about the same size, it might take a minute of fussing, but it's definitely worth it in the long run. You want to just keep in mind the area that you want to show on your card and if you're going to be trimming your background at all before you adhere it to your card base. Now for card makers, I think the most obvious thing that we think of when using a stencil is to do some ink blending. Today I am going to be doing a few cards that include these not too shabby ephemera pieces. So be thoughtful when you get started and pick out colors that match the other items that you want to put on your card. You can even match your blending with, of course, the ink that you're going to use for your sentiments if it's not going to wash out your sentiment. The blending brushes and foams that I'm using today are from scrapbook.com. The majority of what I use in this video today can be found in the description box below. Today I'm using Distress Oxide in Spun Sugar and Distress Ink in Vintage Photo. You don't have to have this particular type of blending tool to work with your stencils. You can use a makeup sponge or any kind of craft sponge and any sort of ink blending tool that is on the market. I like these because the foams are replaceable and I can keep one foam along with its corresponding ink pad together and use one for each color. So while I have quite a few of the blending foams, I have 4 of the scrapbook.com tools, and they just have Velcro on them. So they attach right to that foam, and the foam comes off, and you put the other color foam right on it. Our second technique today starts out with the standard technique, but then I take my stencil and I move it just a tiny bit to the right and a tiny bit up, and I'm going to be creating a shadow. Now I started with a very light pink color, almost a pastel, and I'm going to use the darker brown just right on top of it once I get my stencil set, and it's going to give us a pretty pink shadow that almost looks like it's glowing. It does take a little bit of fussing to get it just right where you want it, but then you just fill in your stencil with ink just like normal, and once you remove the stencil you'll be able to see the glowing shadow. So while I still have the pink and brown ink out, I go ahead and do one more panel using pink on one half and then brown on the other half. Of course, this is just a standard stenciling, but don't forget to mix up the colors and blend in different colors to see what you get. I will be doing a few cards here in a minute that will be using 3 and 4 different colors. This next technique is using scrapbook.com's Pops of Color. But what this is really demonstrating is the use of different media through your stencil. A lot of different companies make different types of pastes and stencil butter and glues and things that can be used with your stencil. Here I am just using the large scrapbook.com stencil tool and putting the pops of color just directly onto that tool and sliding it across the top of the stencil. You know, Ranger has lines of different media, mixed media. There's glossy, matte, grit paste, which, you know, is differently textured, lunar paste. Brutus Monroe has a line of this type of media that are called chroma glaze. I've used those and I like those a lot. It's important to remember with any kind of paste or media that has to dry, they will have a number of different finishes. So there will be glitter, sparkle, gloss, matte, and also some dry opaque and others dry translucent. So those are the things that you want to know when you purchase them or start your project. Our next technique is masking. Now, I talk about my favorite masking paper fairly often. Masking is one of the techniques that I really love for all kinds of card making. Here I am using the Avery repositionable label and my large Fiskars punch just to punch out a piece of the label. And I am going to go ahead and put this directly onto my card panel. This product sticks really well. You want to make sure you burnish it down, and it is also repositionable, so it pulls right off when you're done doing your stenciling. And I'll also be masking with some of the scrapbook.com mint tape. You could use your purple tape or any kind of removable tape for this. I like to use this technique so that I can create a space for a sentiment. That is my favorite way to use this particular technique, and that's what I'll be doing today. So you can make a single layer card that really spotlights that sentiment, and you'll be able to see that when I show you my finished cards at the very end of this video. Of course, using a mask while you're stenciling is just like using a plain piece of paper. Here, I just happen to be using my waffle flower stencil mat. My stencil mat will hold the paper in place and hold the stencil in place. And it also is pretty stationary on my work surface. It's made of some type of silicone that just kind of adheres just enough so that you can do your work and it doesn't move around a lot. For these next couple cards, I am using these 3 Distress Oxide colors. I have Dried Marigold, Mowed Lawn, and Cracklin Campfire. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so that you know when I post new content or go live. Now there is quite a bit of ink still left on my stencil. So what I'm going to do is I am going to spray the stencil with just a little mist of water. This is just plain water in a regular kind of dollar store spray bottle. So just a little mist is going to react with the Distress Oxide inks, and it will wake them up a little bit. And then I'm just going to lay another card panel right on top of the stencil and do a little bit of burnishing. And then we get a reverse stencil. Our last technique today is sprays. Now I'm going to be using Distress Oxide spray. I'm going to be using carved pumpkin and mustard seed. And there are quite a few different sprays on the market. Some are ink, some are paint, some are a mixture of other magical science things, but they are super for doing a really quick background through a stencil. And you can even hit it with the heat gun when you're done to make the drying process go faster. These two are Oxide, so they will react with water, but there are also Distress Spray stains. And the strains will still react with water, but they are much more vibrant because they don't have the chemical that causes the oxidation. So here I just go ahead and mist, and what I'm really doing is spraying towards the back of my desk. I'm not spraying directly on with the yellow, but then I get to the orange and I decide I want, instead of a fine mist, some larger drops. So I do angle the nozzle down just a little bit, and you can see I get some larger drops of the carved pumpkin there. Of course, when I have this much ink left on my stencil, I want to do a print. So I just take a little spritz of water and lay a card panel down directly onto my stencil. And this time I'm going to use a brayer so that I can get a little better coverage, a little more burnishing and contact with the ink and the stencil. And that works pretty well. To finish off my cards today, I use a few different stamp sets. Two of them are from Not Too Shabby. These two are fall themed, and I will go ahead and link another video up in the corner here that shows a good flip through of these stamp sets and the corresponding paper pads. And I also use the Maymay Made It September Stamp of the Month. This is the regular stamp club, and it is called Rascally Raccoon. All three of these stamp sets will be linked in the description box below if you want to check them out. So here are the finished cards using our stenciled panels. The first one is the Distress Oxide Mist, and you can see the yellow and then some of the larger orange splatters there. And I paired that with a Wherever Life Plants You, Bloom with Grace stamp from Not Too Shabby. And then you see the card that I created using the print from the stencil after I did the spray. And I paired that with a little bear stamp that I colored with some alcohol inks and a sentiment that says Hello Pumpkin, and those are from Not Too Shabby as well. This one is the one that I used the tape to mask off a section, and I used the Thankful For You stamp from Not Too Shabby for that one. It really does kind of spotlight that sentiment just by masking off that one section. This card is using the Maymay Made It raccoon, and it says, "To my partner in crime." And this is the one that I sectioned off with the circled, punched masking paper. Here's another one of the bears, and this is the print that I did after I blended those 3 colors for the previous card. And all of these have some random enamel dots and some glitter dots and sequins, just to kind of finish them off. This card is one of the pink ones. I use some of the ephemera from Not Too Shabby's August box of the month. This one I'm using the Bubble Gems on from Brutus Monroe. This also uses some Not Too Shabby ephemera and one of the stamps, actually 2 of the stamps, Hello and Sunshine. This is the panel that I used the glow technique on, and you can see that light pink that makes that brown kind of pop and look like it's glowing just a little bit. Here's the one that I used the pops of color on. And I will check for the name of this color and put it in the description box below. Paired that with some bronze or copper sequins and a Thankful for You stamp. This one, I have another one of Maymay's Racoons. I tried to do a red panda with this one. It looks much more brown on screen than it does in real life. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. If you like videos of this kind where I take one supply and show you multiple ways to use it, let me know in the comments below, and let me know if one of these cards is your favorite. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, safety first.